Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily. We are back and we have lots to talk about today. Recently, Sebastian Stan, of course, the Winter Soldier in the MCU, and more recently playing Donald Trump in The Apprentice, he has made it known that he has a soft spot. Sebastian Stan has a soft spot for the Riddler. The Riddler, of course, most recently played in The Batman. Um, was a great character. We have seen, of course, Jim Carrey play the Riddler. I'm forgetting the name of the actor who played the Riddler. It's just blanking me right now in the Batman, but he did a fantastic job. Um, Now Sebastian Stan wants to play the role, so we're gonna talk about that. And is that even possible? Like, where would that even work? Would that be a standalone movie? Would that be a part of the the larger DCU? We're gonna get into that. Of course, we also have to review episode 4 of the Superman and Lois, the final season on the CW. Uh, there's a lot to get into there. A lot happens in episode 4. Some things that I personally didn't think were going to happen this quickly. Let's just say that. And then there's some other tidbits. So James Gunn is always up to no good. Well, he's up to a lot of good actually. So good to talk about anytime that he mentions anything, any fan comments that he answers, any news that comes from his threads, Q&As. We're gonna get into all of that and so much more. Of course, as always, to do that with me, I've got John. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm great. I can't wait to talk about Superman and Lois. Also, to let you know, Frank Gorshin was the Batman in the Adam West show. He was the Riddler there, as well as John Astin. I think John Astin played him in season 2, and Frank Gorshin came back in season 3.
I mean, I was trying to remember. Like, I'm blanking on who played him in the Batman. Why am I blanking on him?
Paul Dano.
Paul Dano. Ah, yeah, it was tip of my tongue. Paul Dano played the Riddler most recently.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Batman, and then you mentioned Jim Carrey, so I thought you were the last thing you mentioned.
I was jumping around a little. Yes, but no, you're right. Right, absolutely. I mean, there's a proud tradition of many Riddlers throughout the course of the Batman franchise all the way back.
And then Corey Michael Smith as well in Gotham, right. And despite the show not being great, he was great in it. He was most recently Chevy Chase in the Saturday Night movie, which was great, by the way. Right. But we're getting a little sidetracked. So Sebastian Stan wants to play the Riddler. Now, I don't know. Maybe you know this better than me. Because you're more like business side of stuff, mm-hmm. But like with like a contract with like Marvel, do you think that there's probably something in there that stops them from being in like DC productions as like major characters? Because I know that they've been in like they've crossed over, like it's been known, but it's like I usually see stuff. It's like, oh, Ben Affleck was in Daredevil in 2003, and then he was Batman 20 years later. That's like the stuff I see. I don't really see them doing stuff concurrently. Like, I don't really see that, like, oh, they're in MCU, and then at the same time they're in DC. Well, at first EU, now just U. So I don't know if that would work. Like, if we're talking about like a logistics business point of view, like, I don't know, like maybe this is a sign that like his contract is coming up. Maybe he's not going to be in Secret Wars. Maybe he's not going to be in Doomsday. Maybe he's not going to be in that stuff. And Thunderbolts is really, because Falcon and the Winter Soldier was just a miniseries. That's not coming back. So maybe Thunderbolts is really the last. Maybe he dies in Thunderbolts. Maybe this is him cluing us in.
I mean, it's also like in the latest Thunderbolt trailer. No, that's true, because like in the latest Thunderbolts trailer, it's like he's going back to being the Winter Soldier, right? Because he's like he's chasing down the rest of the Thunderbolts team. So almost as if like he's in that like his programming mode, right? Like the one from Civil War where he was brainwashed and sort of like it activates with a certain set of words. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe it'd be weird though, because if they go in that direction, it sort of reverses all the progress and all. It's like the whole character arc.
I don't think they're gonna do that. I think it's just maybe. Well, I mean, maybe there's context and all that, but I was just kind of seeing it from that point of view. But in terms of like my actual thoughts on him, I mean, he has played like villainous characters. Like I never saw it, but I heard he was good in Fresh.
He was really good and Fresh. I reviewed that when the movie came out, and everybody, like, I think Roland watched it, and maybe Angelina was there too. And I remember like everybody in mags, they love like it was creepy. It's sort of Sebastian Stan really inhabits any character he is slotted into, and the same goes for, of course, his most recent one with The Apprentice, and that's really where he's been promoting The Apprentice, and that's where he made this comment. But no, go. I definitely think as an actor, he's
Yeah, I
underrated
think
and
like
not
in
afraid to try
terms
new
of that,
things.
I
Yeah.
think he's capable as an actor. He wouldn't be like my first choice. Not saying like it's just like I wouldn't think of it because like we're just so used to the Winter Soldier, even though he technically started as a villain in the MCU and became big. Like we just because, but the thing is, the Winter Soldier is a very different kind of villain to the Riddler. Winter Soldier is about brute strength and
Mm-hmm.
all that. Well, Riddler is a very intelligent character. He's
Right.
the whole point of the Riddler, which is I think something that the Paul Dano Riddler definitely missed was the whole basis of the Riddler is he wants to prove that he's better and smarter than Batman. Like that's always been, his end game. Like he's
I mean,
like he wants to
but
best
isn't
the
that what
Dark
Paul
Knight.
Dano did? Like for especially
Not
in like he's like, I thought you were like
really.
smarter than that, Bruce. Is like
Like
it's
not really because like he
he's
fully
like,
admitted
why
in
is he
his
talking
like
to you? You
fucking
know? Yeah.
monologue in like the third act was like I wanted to prove that we're one and the same. That's not really the Riddler though. The Riddler doesn't want to prove that they're the same. He wants to prove that he's
Right.
smarter than him. Mad
But that's because
Hatter, I
in this
feel like
story,
fits
like
that
he's
more.
inspired by the Bat Vigilante, right? Like that they kind of it was a different take on it. But I see your point. Sorry, go ahead.
Um, Not saying Paul Dano was bad. It's just like I feel like he could have been a lot better in that role. But with Sebastian Stan's version, I don't think that they would have him because it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Because like the first movie in the Beck's universe, they had the Riddler. I don't think that they would have the Riddler in the first Brave in the first DCU Batman movie. So I don't think we're going to be seeing the Riddler anytime soon.
Right.
However, if we're like throwing all of that out the window, like business with the MCU, logistics in terms of filming other projects, like who's likely to be the villain? If we throw out all that, and we're just talking about Sebastian Stan as the Riddler, and let's say boom, he's cast and like boom, he's going to be in the first movie. I would say I would have no problem with that. I think he would do a very good job. I personally haven't seen him do anything similar to that because I haven't seen Fresh. I just I saw the premise. I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting, but then I just I I saw like some other tidbits that I wasn't a fan of, so I just never ended up watching it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if like boom, oh yeah, Sebastian Stan cast as the Riddler for Brave and the Bold, I could see that. I would like that. I think he would do a really good job, and I think that that's definitely good. He's not my personal favorite choice. My favorite choice was always Matthew Gray Gubler, who played Dr. Spencer Reed in Criminal Minds. I always thought he was
Oh, okay.
he voiced
Yeah.
him in Assault on Arkham. So he has played the character before, and they are open to doing voice actors as mainstay live action actors because Meg
Right.
Donnelly was Supergirl in the Tomorrowverse, and she was one of the
Right.
on the short list. So clearly, they're like, okay, we can maybe have a voice actress who's played them before, and then
Yeah.
have them play them in live action in a different universe. And so I think Sebastian Stan definitely has the range. Like he was fucking like Tommy and fucking Pam and Tommy. I still want to watch this. It's on. I know it's on Hulu. I still
It's
need to.
so unhinged, like the
Yeah,
and again, he just inhabits every character he
yeah,
plays, and you kind of forget that it's Sebastian Stan. I'm still waiting for him to play the young Luke Skywalker. They're gonna eventually stop de-aging Mark Hamill and be like, let's just have Sebastian Stan play him.
yeah.
But
I
I'm
think
just yeah,
yeah, he's definitely I think underrated. It's just like I think he needs a really good role, kind of like Robert Downey Jr. when he was in Oppenheimer. He
mm,
just needs that really good role to people remember, oh no, he's actually a really, and not saying like, I hate to diminish the MCU because the MCU has done a lot for a lot of people and I mean I have my many problems with it but it has a lot of good movies and it's got a lot of good stuff and that they were chugging along when during phases 1 through 3 and that was great stuff. And I love Marvel like as comics, as movies, not MCU and MCU combined. um But it's like sometimes you kind of get caught up with that they're this character, an iconic character that a lot of people love for so long that they kind of get stuck in that, not typecast, just it's like who's the fucking first thing you think of when you think Robert Downey Jr.? You think of Iron Man now. The first thing you think of Chris Pratt, you think Star Lord. First thing you think of with Sebastian Stan, you fucking think of Bucky slash the Winter Soldier slash White Wolf, whatever fucking name he has now. I can't keep track. But like that's just what you think of because it's just like they've been part of this big franchise for so long. So I would love to see like Sebastian Stan like do something like to remind people like, yeah, he's a fucking great actor. Now I don't know if being in another superhero franchise would be that answer, but I would say I'm just going off what you said in terms of like being a chameleon, right, kind of like James McAvoy a little bit, where he just bodies the role like no matter what he does. And I would kind of like to see that more from him, just in a general sense. But the Riddler as well, I think that would definitely be. And he said he has a soft spot for him, so like clearly he's a fan, kind of like Channing Tatum as Gambit, gonna make a name for himself, So I think
make a name for myself. Like, yeah.
Just remember what happened here today. So I would like to see this. I think it would be fun. I think it's like because now that I'm talking about it, I'm kind of getting like excited a little bit, but it's the logistics and the business and like who would actually be the villain of Brave and the Bold kind of takes you back. It's like it's unlikely to happen this close. Maybe we could see him as like a voice in like dynamic duo, like the Riddler would show up there and he could be like the voice in that, and we could like see if he could do that in live action. But logistically, I can't see it actually happening, but it's nice to see like, okay, he's not like, fuck DC, like Marvel all the way kind of guy. He's like, I love both. I love the Riddler. That would be a cool character to play. Keep me in mind when you're casting him eventually. So I like that.
Exactly. And and that's the thing about him. His approach to his career has been that he does a little bit of everything. He's not shying away from any particular role, right? Like he has done so many different movies that are completely entirely different genres, from biopics to comedy to like horror to like, mystery thrillers to of course superhero movies. He's been in a little bit of everything, and he's not afraid to try something different. And that's great. And again, he just
kind of reminds me of Daniel Radcliffe a little bit. Although it's a little bit different because Daniel Radcliffe, this is all post Harry Potter. Well, he's still in as Bucky, but like Daniel Radcliffe doing like the fucking Guns Akimbo. He did Weird, the Al Yankovic story. He's just been like, that man does not have to work another fucking day in his life ever again.
Get those checks the rest of his life.
But it's just like, he's just like, I love acting, and he's like, he's just gonna do the like, I just like him as Weird Al was just like that was like it goes to show how much I miss like old school parody movies like Zaz and Mel Brooks and that kind of thing. I'm like, damn, this kind of takes you back a little bit, and it reminds me of that. And like from what I saw of Fresh, what little I saw like clips here and there, I think Daisy Edgar Jones, was she the one who was the female lead in that movie? Angelina's like celebrity crush. It seemed like. So I think I think like that would be a real like I like at first I was like, Sebastian Stan, Bucky Barnes, like I don't know. But now I'm thinking, now that you've mentioned all these other roles from him and seeing all these pictures of like, I'm like, oh yeah, he fucking played Tommy, I forget his last name, but Tommy and Pam and Tommy as the Motley Crue drummer. But I was like, yeah, he was in that. I was like, damn, he was in Fresh too. Oh yeah, he's fucking Donald Trump right now. It's like, it's just like, oh yeah, he's fucking like all these fucking roles where he just disappears into like, damn, yeah. Honestly, let's like, it's not like Aaron Pierre levels where being on this show just completely turned me around on the fucking casting to the point where I loved it when he was cast. But like, I'm like, you know what? That's I can see it. I think that's really cool. And I think he could definitely, I mean, although Lily James also definitely fucking chameleoned into as Pamela Anderson, most definitely. That was really. I was like Lily James. I'm like, I don't know, she could fucking Pamela Anderson. I don't know about like I love Lily James. She's great. But then when I saw her, I was like, oh no, that's just Pamela Anderson. I just see Pamela. I don't fucking see Lily James at all. So that kind of giving her some props here too. But yeah, I would say Sebastian Stan is the Riddler. I approve. I
Yeah.
approve.
Yeah, no, and look, what I was gonna mention real quick about you were asking about the business side of things, right? Like because of course he's still playing. Sebastian Stan is still very much in MCU, and in fact, in his promotional tour for The Apprentice, he's been asked about like what about the criticism that the MCU gets sometimes, and he's defended the MCU like like look, it has if Marvel wasn't making all these movies that were making so much money, the box office would be struggling even more so potentially, and that there's a like you should give it some props, like despite the fact that maybe yes there might be theme park ride movies like Martin Scorsese says, they still have a value to the larger
Right.
Hollywood at large, right? But at the same time he's not shying away from the idea of playing a role for the other side of the comic book world in DC. And as far as what's possible, I don't believe his contract with Marvel explicitly forbids him or forbids him
I don't
from
think it would either, but
playing
I
a
don't
role
know.
character in DC. And we have seen clearly like Marvel and DC collaborate on some level. Like remember when James Gunn was shooting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, um it was his crew shot the Peacemaker cameo for the Justice League, right? With Aquaman and the Flash. And then uh the villain of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, uh his screen tests were shot by Marvel, or was it not Marvel, by DC, by the Peacemaker crew. And so they clearly that they cross paths, and Kevin Feige has always said like maybe one day there could be a Marvel DC crossover. So in reality Marvel and DC aren't exactly like rivals in quite the way fans
Yeah,
make them out to be. And from a business standpoint, there's nothing stopping
I
Sebastian
don't think
Stan
there
from
would be
signing up to
either.
play the Riddler in a future DC project, whether it's part of the DCU or otherwise. It would just be a matter of availability, because the one thing that will potentially get in the way is if he's got
Scheduling
a
conflict.
Marvel project coming up, a scheduling conflict, exactly, where he's tied in to do something. Like this is where Elizabeth Olsen was like, I'm so glad that I'm, kind of freed up with all my contracted appearances at Marvel. I can do these other projects that I wasn't able to do for all those years she was playing the Scarlet Witch, which she might be back doing again if you go by what's going on in Agatha all along right now. But nonetheless, and her tone on the character has changed a little bit, sort of like hinting at a little bit of what happened with RDJ, talking about like I'm done with Iron Man. She's like, you know what, I'd love to return to the role one day, and here we are, he's Doctor Doom. So it could happen. But that being said, with Sebastian Stan, he's still very much actively involved in the MCU, so his Marvel commitments, if the schedules don't line up, will keep him away from other projects, including DC. But as long as the schedules can work out, and if his Marvel days are coming to an end, then I would love to see him, like you said, in
Yeah.
the Riddler. But John, speaking of scheduling conflicts potentially, there was a
Yes.
scheduling conflict keeping Greg Fraser away from the Batman 2. But now we've gotten some news that Dune Messiah, which is the next Dune movie, the third movie in that franchise, with Greg Fraser is going to be involved in as the director of photography. That movie is now going to begin production in 2026, whereas we know that the Batman 2 is starting production in 2025. So that does potentially clear up his schedule to return for the Batman Part 2, because he was, of course, the director of photography on the Batman a few years ago. John, what are your thoughts on this idea? Again, this is speculation. Nobody has said anything about this. We don't know officially who is going to be the DP for the Batman 2, but Matt Reeves has said that the movie is going to start filming next year. So do you think that with the Dune Messiah now filming in 2026, that Greg Fraser is now freed up to take on Batman 2, or is it already too
Yeah, I
late,
think
that they
that
might be too far along with the pre-production, that they might already have somebody else in that role for the Batman 2?
I think that makes sense. I mean, I don't think that they would. I mean, they're still like I don't think they revealed when specifically they're going to start filming with Batman Part 2. So I feel like they're still going to be in pre-production for a while, and I think they'll still have enough time to like get him to do that.
Right.
And so I think that makes sense. And Greg Fraser is a great cinematographer, both Dune movies and Batman were great looking. I mean, he, manages to make boring ass desert look interesting. Like, damn, good for you, Fraser.
The scale and scope of those movies is amazing. It's like
Yeah,
the Roger Deakins esque, like, aesthetic. And of course,
yeah.
the Batman, like, dude, it's one of the best looking Batman movies I've ever seen. Um, Even though the scale of the Dark Knight trilogy was immense, but the Gotham that we got to see in the Batman was also just probably the most alive the Gotham has ever been in live action. And Greg Fraser had a big part to play in that, and you can see that if you watch the behind the scenes documentary stuff that came along with the Batman, and talking about the approach Greg Fraser had to the visuals of the movie,
Hmm.
and how he wanted to kind of, like, fill muddy up the frame and really kind of like give you that noir immersive aesthetic of the movie. And when you look at what he has done with the Dune franchise, you look at the trailer for the Dune Prophecy series that's set to come out on HBO this year,
Looks
you can
great, by
see
the
that
way.
it looks great, but you can also see at the same time that the scale and the cinematic language of the Dune movies is not
Mhm.
quite translated, because this is for TV, and even though they have big pieces and everything, you can tell that Greg Fraser is not the cinematographer on the show, and whereas you can clearly see in these two shots here, they look cinematic, they look iconic, they look like they're made for the big screen. So I think
Mhm.
having Greg Fraser come back for the Batman 2 can only be a big positive, because he's one of the
Yeah,
most sought after director of photographies in the business today.
clearly.
And for him to come back for the Batman 2 would be amazing. I personally would love to see that happen. Um, it So far it's just people trying to connect dots, because, like,
Right.
if he's not doing this
Logistics,
next
as I
year,
was saying before.
like, surely he will do the Batman too. But for all we know, he could be tied up with something else already, right? Like, he might have signed on to something else. And the fact
Yeah.
that the Batman is already prepping to start filming next year, we don't know again what time next year. Whereas we know, like, Supergirl is starting in January, Lantern is meant to start in I think like early springtime. We don't quite know when exactly the Batman Part Two is start filming next year, but
I
I
mean,
imagine if it is, then they're already building sets, so then maybe they might have hired a DP already. So who
I
knows?
mean, I know IMDb doesn't mean shit, but like in terms of um like upcoming projects, Batman Part 2 is listed, Dune Messiah is not. So obviously we'll see, because he is apparently going to be the cinematographer on the next Lord and Miller movie, which stars Ryan Gosling and Milena Vaintrub.
Right.
Um, and which is also calling back to Drew Goddard from yesterday's discussion. Drew Goddard is going to be, writing that with a novel that was based on Andy Weir, just like The Martian. So that's going to be, interesting. But he might be the cinematographer for that and might not be available to do Dune Messiah. But, it depends how long those last. Um, but I could still see him maybe doing like back to back movies and then back to back to back with Dune Messiah. I would love to see his eye for that. And although, I mean, maybe Denis Villeneuve can actually get Roger Deakins. He did work with him on Blade Runner 2049. And that was
Dude,
I mean,
yes.
every single
I
one of Sir Roger Deakins' movies is beautiful, even if the movie sucks. He rarely picks a bad movie, but um, I think that would be really cool to see that if we don't get Fraser, which I mean would be sad, but it would be. I mean, if we can get someone, I'm sure. Like if he can't get Fraser for whatever reason, Villeneuve will pick someone who can fill those shoes quite nicely. He's worked with a lot of great people in the past, and or not quite yet. A DP that will do just as an amazing job as what
right.
Greg Fraser has done on those movies. So obviously we'll have to see, but it seems likely he could probably do two, three if it's you know what IMDb has gone by. But IMDb can be edited by anybody, so who that's might be not really, for sure stuff. But if rumor mill, if he's doing all three of these, then I think he could probably make it work. Because like
Yeah, no,
remember, we also have a lot of people seem to forget, like, yeah, you have DP, but you also have like second unit, you have third unit, you have like all that stuff like B-roll and all these other like cinematographers that don't really get mentioned. Yeah, yes, you have the big like head honcho director of photography,
right.
the
Yeah.
cinematographer. Yes, you have him, but you also have like a lot of people doing smaller like B-roll shots that
Mhm.
like never get mentioned. Like there's like a whole team of cinematographers that are doing tons of different types of footage. So yeah, I think like I still remember one of my favorite ones was a guy who was reviewing, I don't know if you've heard of this movie called The Substance. It was with Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, where he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was one of the DPs on this movie, and the two things I was assigned were palm trees and butts. I think I did a pretty good job. So yeah, it's like a lot of people doing a lot of different things. So obviously, if he's not doing every single shot in the movie. I don't know if you guys like knew that about movies. Obviously, we've been around the block. We know, like, I went to
I
school.
mean,
You've
he'll be
actually
a
been on
part of
production,
planning
so
a lot of it
yeah,
out, and he'll be
yeah,
engaged. And he's
right.
the head of the department, but
Obviously, the director
he
of it.
won't be
Yeah,
behind the camera. Exactly, he won't be behind the camera for everything.
yeah,
Um, Right. But also, I mean, look, as far as alternatives go, you can also go with somebody like a Hoyt van Hoytema, right? Like who Christopher Nolan loves to work with and has worked with
yeah,
on many movies, including reuniting with him for Oppenheimer. He worked with him on Tenet, Interstellar, Dunkirk. He's also done Nope, with Jordan Peele, and he
yeah,
did Ad Astra. Like you could see that as far as like doing scale and at the same time doing something that is very characters heavy and being able to kind of mishmash the two things together. Plus also all movies that were really made for IMAX, right? Like shot with big IMAX cameras, especially Christopher Nolan movies.
yeah.
Greg Fraser is great with that, and also Hoytema would be a great option, I think, if there was another person to kind of bring in. And I know Christopher Nolan's actually starting production on his next movie next year, so maybe he's already tied up with that. But still, I would love to see Greg Fraser back. I think he's one of the best in the business right now. Maybe Roger Deakins, like you said, he's not. Maybe he's not up to anything.
Jaron Blash could
So
be also a good choice. He's
yeah,
definitely out there, but he mostly works with Robert Eggers, and he's like
yeah.
also like the only thing he has is like in terms of like future stuff is Nosferatu, which is coming out later this year. So I don't know if he has anything after that. So maybe he can
Yeah.
possibly do something along those lines because he's like because what I like about Jaron Blash a lot, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Um, but he is really good, especially if you watch The Lighthouse. I mean, he was nominated for an Academy Award for this.
Yeah.
So he can photograph black and white really good. I know that doesn't really matter because none of these movies plan to be black and white, but that just goes to show his eye as a cinematographer because it's really fucking hard to light and photograph black and white if you're making a
Mhm.
movie for black and white because a lot of
Right.
these guys don't like have an eye for that because it's such an because I mean nobody shoots in black and white anymore. It's and but the way you the way you light a scene, the way you structure it, because the shadows are harsher, the fucking lighting is way more difficult to manage and like all that. But like I feel like him having that eye for something so difficult helps him be a really good cinematographer.
Yeah.
So that's why I would mention him because I think like doing something as difficult as that so well helps in why he's so good at what he does, most definitely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
another thing Blash also mentioned when he was doing, I don't know if he was like doing an interview or something, but he mentioned how in Nosferatu, all the Transylvania scenes, he's like, oh yeah, all of those were lit by candlelight. No
Yeah.
studio lighting was used at all. And I'm like,
I mean, you
that's
can't do that until
fucking
recent
difficult.
times, right? Like, because the cameras just wouldn't register that back in the day.
Yeah,
Now you
so that's
can
why
because they're
he's like,
faster
what
with like the
we,
lenses
I
and
don't know if he said this or Egger said this, but like somebody was, one of those guys was doing the interview and he was like, yeah, we would have to like blow out certain candles to get the like look we wanted
hmm
and like relight other candles to like make it look right. And I'm like, that's fucking difficult, especially
right.
again, that's the eye he has. So that's why I'm like, I love Jaron Bushke. He's so good. Like he hasn't done a ton of like noteworthy stuff outside of like Robert Eggers movies, but he's just like that level of like, maybe just Robert Eggers is also just that talented as well, and Jared Blash kind of
Yeah.
goes into that. But like, if having that eye and making it look as good as it does, that also really helps. And somebody like that would also be really good. But honestly, anybody we mentioned would be great for Batman or Dune Messiah. I hope, they get someone good, and I strongly believe that they will get good, whatever Greg Fraser does. Maybe he might do neither. Maybe he says fuck you to both, I'm going to Lord and Miller. So
I mean,
I don't think he'll do that, but
yeah, I think he's definitely involved in Dune Messiah. It's just a question of the Batman too. I mean, I also think one other name I was gonna throw out there just real quick would be Emmanuel Lubezki. He's worked with Alfonso Cuarón on like Gravity. He most recently has been working on Children. I think it was Children of Men. Actually, not recently. This is from way back in the day. Birdman was something that he did as well. The Revenant, that got the DiCaprio his Oscar. He most recently worked on like Amsterdam, and he's been working on a TV show, Disclaimer, which I'm not actually. It's a mini series that he's been doing work on, but he's got that aesthetic like of he can do scale and yet he can do those intimate moments, and I think those are both things that a blockbuster like the Batman did a really good job of balancing out, and as does the Dune movies. So, but yeah, Greg Fraser, look, it's possible that he can be back because from a purely a scheduling standpoint, Dune Messiah is now going to start production in 2026, and even though that means they're doing pre-production next year, that could give Greg Fraser enough time to be involved with the Batman to shoot the movie and then move on, kind of almost like in a natural transition to Dune Messiah. And that's all, of course, under the Warner Brothers umbrella. So it would work out. He stays within the house of, of the Warner Brothers. So it could work out. It could definitely work out. He can go from Warner Brothers Pictures to DC Studios and back. It's all on the same lot in Burbank. So I'd love to see that. I think we all loved, Greg Fraser's work with both Dune movies as well as, of course, the Batman. So we'd love to see him back in there. But speaking of, great stories that are to be told, John, Superman and Lois is in the process of telling the last of its great stories. And episode 4 just dropped recently this week. I believe you saw it yesterday. And I did want to get your opinions on it because 4 episodes in, we started off the show, of course, with the Man of Steel, Superman himself, Clark Kent, dying, his heart literally being ripped out by Doomsday. But that hellacious fight that he got into toward the end of last season and finished at the beginning of this one. But apparently the rumors of the Man of Steel's demise have been greatly exaggerated. So tell me all about where we stand now that we are 4 episodes into what is a shortened season of Superman and Lois, the final season. What are you liking the most about it, and what did you enjoy the most about episode 4? What surprised you? What are you looking forward to the most moving forward?
I really liked. I can understand what they're going for here. So spoilers for the last 3 episodes, but yeah. So it was revealed last episode that like General Sam Lane injected himself with the Bruno Mannheim serum that made his like physiology like a Kryptonian, like Superman, and so they got his heart back into Superman, and now Superman is resurrected and he's using his heart. He still has his powers, but he's like kind of like, I can't hear out of one of my ears. He kind of takes a fumble at one point during the episode. He he's showing like some kind of like, he's not Superman quite yet. He's only been back for a couple of weeks, so it's like this is like kind of weird. Like this is unknown territory. And then we also have to do with John getting powers now, which is definitely exciting. And there's like some, friction between Jordan and Lois because of something that happened last episode. Like she had a choice between him and her, Lois had a choice between her 2 sons. It was like Lex Luthor trying to get into people's heads. And and she like, there was all this stuff. So there's like a lot of friction now. But overall, I liked I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that, because with this episode, it's mostly about Kyle and Chrissy's wedding a little bit, which isn't bad. I can see what they're doing. They can only do so much in terms of like this season, because they have no budget, they are they're kind of going bit by bit in terms of like the guest stars for each episode. Like before we started, I was referencing, if you guys remember Arrested Development season 4, how like each episode was like was like about a different person, because like they couldn't afford anybody now, and it was an early Netflix production.
Right.
So they're like, they can't afford people, so let's try and do this whole thing. And so it seems like, okay, so like this episode has the Langs, this episode has, the Irons. This one is about Kyle and Chrissy's wedding. So I can see what they're doing. Do I love it? Not totally, but I feel like a lot of the show has relied on the great supporting cast. Well, except the Langs. Fuck the Langs. They suck. But like in terms of like everybody else, I like really enjoyed like the arc with like Kyle, and like I think this was like good. So I never loved Chrissy Beppo's character. She was always kind of annoying, but I like it. Still deals with like good character stuff, and we also deal with like Superman dealing with like having powers and being back, but like not totally. And it seems like they're foreshadowing that he's maybe gonna lose his powers or even like just die again. Because
Yeah.
I feel like what they're gonna do, again, this is just my John's theory time, where they're gonna have um them fight. Superman is gonna fight Doomsday again, because he has to stop him. He's like just out milling about, like he's Lex Luthor is like has him as like a minion, which is a little awkward. Like Doomsday definitely didn't seem like, oh, he's just like Lex Luthor's lackey, but I'm like, yeah, that shows the power of Lex Luthor. So
I mean, he was in BVS too, apparently. Well, relatively speaking.
yeah,
There's
but
precedence, I suppose.
I think what's so like, I don't know, which I just think like they're gonna be, I feel like they're just gonna kill him off. Like it's gonna be like like I feel like we're going through like a goodbye tour a little bit, where he's like, okay, we're tying the knots of like, quite literally in this episode, since it's about a wedding, they're gonna be tying up loose ends throughout like, okay, they're tying up the loose ends of these characters, while still having the through line of Superman and Lois and the family, because it's like, okay, we just got to make sure to tie up everything before we like before we get like that final like goodbye. So I think yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a 2.5. I think it would be like a 3.5, like maybe a 3.5.
I mean, to me, seeing like again, Superman and Lois back on screen, because Bitsy,
yeah, the time skip was a little like, it's
so good together.
Yeah, like that's great, and I could see the time skip annoying some people, like him getting used to his powers, but I feel like that they're like trying to like do as much as they can with so little budget, with so little time. So I can kind of understand that. Like they had to cut a lot of corners with this final season because of how little they were fucking given, which is sad. So I understand. Like I'm not. I would say this is probably the weakest season so far, but it's not a bad season. Like especially when all the other seasons were like 8s to 10s. This is just like good so far. It's not great. The first 2 episodes were really fucking good. These past 2 haven't been great, but I still think that they've been good. And we do get some good character dramas. I understand like a lot of people are going to be turned off by the Kyle and Chrissy stuff. I get it. Like I know, but the thing is, this show is always
show, so you got to have.
It is a CW show, but this show has always prided itself on a very strong supporting cast. Like it's about like the people of Smallville as well as Superman and Lois. So I feel like we're getting that too, and I don't mind that. I like it. I think it's good. It could be better, but again, I know I'm burdened with the knowledge of like knowing that they have no fucking budget and and they had to like work with like $3 and a ham sandwich and 3 less episodes than they would have been given. So there's that as well. But yeah, I still think it was a good episode. Not great. It was good, and but it's definitely lifted by the charisma of Tyler Hoechlin and Betsy Tulloch, and and I like the actors who play Jordan and John, and I still like Kyle. Like, I still think he's a good character, and um, I liked the arc they gave him. So yeah, overall good episode. Not great, but I still look forward to what they have in mind. So yeah, I still love the show. I still think it's a great show, and I still urge everyone to watch it. Could it be better? Yeah, it might fumble a little bit at times, but still think we have a lot of greatness to come. So yeah,
Yeah. May stumble, they may fall, but they'll, eventually join you in the sun, Cal.
yeah. I knew you were gonna get that. That's why put
Yeah.
that egg in there. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm totally catching what you're vibing there, DC Jesus. Of course we get the new suit. Like there's the suit. That's definitely different from the suit that we've gone in the past. He's got the belt now. And the logo
Oh
looks
no, he's
different.
had
Like,
the belt before.
is it?
He's
I
had the
feel like
red
they
belt.
haven't, like, this specifics. I mean, I
This is definitely a
some,
tweaked
like,
suit. Like, definitely like
exactly.
slimmed it down, and it's slightly
Yeah.
different, but it's relatively the same. But yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Looks nice. I mean, the episode
I
end.
also one thing
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, one more thing. I like how like it's in the preview for next episode, but they showed like a news article that like Superman's back, and they used the headline "Superman lives." I'm like, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Haha, very
Perfect.
cute.
Very perfect. Yep. Well, look, John, I have an appreciation for the show because I think it's done a good job of carrying on the legacy of Superman on the small screen while they, kind of reboot on the big screen. Because as far as this show goes, it's a perfect it's transition between the Henry Cavill Superman and the David Cornstalk Superman, and it ties you over. And to be quite honest, like we can all enjoy the many different Superman. Like nobody
Yeah.
here has to pick one specific Superman and be like, that's like, you can love a particular version of the character, John, but you don't need to only love that one or like hate all the other ones. And this show here, Rotten Tomatoes, it's always been received really well. It's like the Penguin is sitting in the 90s. This show sits in like the 80s, the high 80s. So people love the show and they've loved it for many seasons. And like you said, it's a shortened final season, but they're giving the show a chance to wrap up all of its big storylines, and I really appreciate that. And it looks like, kind of like with the Penguin, where they're like not moving at a snail's pace, they're just getting after it. This show is also like Superman and Lois is doing its thing with paying off a lot of the things they've set up in the previous season, all the story threads, but at the same time still showing us a reverence for the character of Superman, while also giving Clark Kent something new, like a weakened Clark Kent who feels a little bit more human, something that we really don't get to see outside of, like, when he's around Kryptonite. And I like that. Like, I think that's a different take on like how you get Superman to be a little more Clark Kent, Kent Kal-El to be more relatable. And I like what they're doing here. That's still charting new ground, which for this show to be doing under the circumstances of it being like the last remnant of the Arrowverse, as the DC era of shows in CW, shortened season, lesser budget, half the size of the cast. I think it's they're doing a great job. Speaking of which, look, like I said before, great art by Aaron Bailey art. We found this on Threads the other day. You can love all of your Superman, and you don't have to pick one. We have got some great Superman over the years. Of course, right now you can go into a movie theater and watch Christopher Reeves version of Superman, like more so just Christopher Reeve, the man himself. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, is in a theater near you all around the country. And then of course you got the Henry Cavill Superman, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League. Those are still out there. You can watch them. You can stream them if you have a digital
Unfortunately, no
copy or
Brandon
a
Routh
physical
or Dean
copy.
Cain or Kirk Allen or George Reeves. Fuck those
Yeah,
guys, I guess.
I guess. I mean, well, it could be a little more inclusive, but I do appreciate that these. I mean, I would say that these four are the four most iconic ones. All right.
Yeah.
Like from Christopher Reeve to Henry Cavill, you got Tyler Hoechlin there, of course, and then of course David Cornsweet and Crypto in the middle. I think this is a great.
The
mix.
gross, mangy Crypto everyone hates, apparently.
I don't get it. I don't get the hate.
Like, it's just like, because it's so funny, because my dumbass friend who's a fucking Snyder, well, he's not a friend of mine anymore, but he
Dang. Okay.
yeah, no, he's a fucking asshole, but he's like a fucking Snyder cultist. That's not the reason why I stopped being friends with him, but he's just an asshole all around. But I was like posting on another friend of mine's like where he posts like the picture of like Zack Snyder's Crypto, and he's like a German Shepherd holding a machine gun, and
I
then
saw that one. Yeah, we talked
yeah,
about it on the show. Yeah.
we've there's been so many different ones I've seen, and I'm like, yeah, it's like reverse John Wick. Superman gets killed, and then like Crypto has to like kill all the people that killed him, and then
Oh,
and then he snaps the bad guy's neck at the end.
Crypto Wick.
And,
yeah,
and then I'm like, yeah, it's funny. And then of course this fucking asshole is just like, yeah, but Gunn's Crypto looks stupid, doesn't it? It looks so stupid. I swear, it looks so dumb. It looks like a mangy mutt. And he's like getting so offended, and I'm like, you're just so fucking pathetic, you fucking wino.
Well, look, this image I think is a great symbol of inclusivity. You can love all your different.
Like we love every
Superman.
From Kirk Allen to David. Well, I wouldn't say David Cornsweet yet because we haven't seen him yet. Let's say Kirk Allen to Tyler Hoechlin, all the ones we've actually seen from, you know, like from the big screen of Kirk Allen and Christopher Reeve and Brandon Routh, Henry Cavill. All of them are great. To the small screen of George Reeves, of, you know, Gerard Christopher and, you know, Superboy, and like Dean Cain and Tyler Hoechlin and Tom Welling. Like we have all those guys, and then you also have like Tim Daly and George Newbern and all those guys, and who, you know, do all of these and do all of like the voice acting of like this great character as well. Like every single one of them, I don't think we've gotten a bad Superman. I genuinely believe we have not gotten a bad Superman. I think it's like a perfect. It's not like a George Clooney thing. You know, I don't think we've gotten a bad one. Like sure, there's like some better than others, but like,
yeah,
like honestly, it's just like every single one has been like peak, like has just been like awesome. Like there maybe like Brandon Routh or Henry Cavill could have gotten better material to work with, but they were not bad in those movies. You know, they were always the best with the material they were given. So I truly believe that we've never gotten a bad Superman. All of them have been great in their own ways, no matter the material. Yeah, Jack Quaid is another one. You know, from what I've heard. So yeah, I think like we love all the Supermen here. Even George Clooney. We all love the Batman here. Like all the Batmen have, you know, gotten good and the good and the bad. You know, all the Wonder women's. You know, we've gotten so much greatness from a lot of these heroes, and even the ones that haven't appeared yet on the big screen or small screen just yet. We love what they have in mind. You know. We just we don't want to yuck anybody's yum. We want to try and be like, okay, there's greatness everywhere, and we want to accept that greatness no matter what, because that's what Superman teaches us. He teaches us to, you know, try to love everything, include everyone, and maybe punch in the face a douchebag, you know, someone who's not accepting. Snyder cultist, but you know, it's just like.
Yeah, but
we love all these guys.
Out of a tree or a squirrel, you know, that's
a squirrel, a dog, maybe
rampaging monster of some kind. But you know, look, it's great to see that Superman and Lois is wrapping up its run on the CW or wherever you get a chance to watch it. It's on streaming if you're abroad outside of the US. But it's doing a great job. Superman and Lois is on its way to its grand finale, and the Superman movie, of course, is on its way as well next year. The summer of Superman is coming our way. We're talking about the New York Comic Con over the weekend, and James Gunn making so many, you know, big, you know, not announcement necessarily, but just giving us little tidbits of like Supergirl is going to start filming in January. That, you know, we've got some more screen tests happening. That, you know, Lanterns and Supergirl have all been blessed from the beginning, and Superman has been blessed from the beginning. So yeah, of course, we got Crypto, you know, post-production happening on the Superman movie right now, and of course, Peacemaker season 2, James Gunn is still filming. So John Cena is busy. He mentioned that John Cena has made probably one of the biggest leaps in terms of as an actor, and improved so quickly that is so impressed by it. And I just, you know, would love to see again all the different helmets, for example, that John Cena is gonna get to wear in season 2. In addition to, of course, how the stories are now going to tie together with Superman, with Creature Commandos that's coming out in a month and a half's time. You've got so much stuff to look forward to, and so much stuff already out there.
Yeah.
And more Superman related stuff. You can still watch the Superman Christopher Reeve story documentary in a movie theater near you. And we'll be back tomorrow with the Also Curious show, as well as DCU Daily, of course. So we've got lots to talk about. The Brothers movie on Amazon Prime Video. We're going to talk about, there's some new news about the Carrie movie franchise. And of course, we have to look ahead to, of course, I think Venom is on the horizon, right? The Venom, the Last Dance.
Venom.
I enjoy those movies personally. I know you're not necessarily the biggest fan, but
I enjoy them. Like,
You
I
do?
think the
Okay.
first one is like genuinely a pretty good action movie. The second one has its flaws, but it's still a fun time.
The second one, I will agree, was not as good as the first. And I hope the third one is like a more of a return to form with what the first one was. I still enjoy the chemistry between Venom and Eddie Brock. Like Tom Hardy does a fantastic job. That's probably the best part of those movies. That's what really makes those movies tick and work for a lot of people. But you know what? DCU Daily, we're not going anywhere. We are here Monday through Fridays. If you guys are checking us out for the first time, then hit that like button if you haven't already, and hit that subscribe button if you are new here.
And the bell and the subscribe and all the things.
Well, when we are live or have a new video going up. Of course, today's show, as we do it 5 days a week, we are here talking about the latest from the world of DC. Today we were talking about the potential casting of, or actually the desire for Sebastian Stan to come in and play the Riddler in the DCU or DC Elseworlds, wherever he just has always had a soft spot for the character. And we talked about Superman and Lois episode 4, and then later on this week we will be looking ahead to Penguin episode 6. The Penguin, man, that show's amazing. So, and we'll be back tomorrow with lots more from the world of Hollywood. Until then, John, have a good rest of your day. And as I said earlier, guys, hit that like button, hit the subscribe, go in the comments, let us know what you think about Superman and Lois. Are you enjoying it so far? What do you think about Sebastian Stan joining the world of DC as the Riddler? And until next time, guys, have a great day, and we'll see you next time on DCU Daily.